So despite the endless parade of distractions going on from Donald Trump's White House and Donald Trump himself, including his terrible, horrific, embarrassing speech at the UN, and also Escalator Gate, as it's now being called, where Donald Trump is going out and the White House is going out and telling everyone there is under the sun that there was a deep state UN agent who stopped the escalator that Donald Trump was trying to go up. Despite that, despite the shootings, despite the division, despite the rhetoric, the simple fact remains that Donald Trump is, for some reason, covering up for the most notorious child sexual predator in the history of this country. And no matter what he does, no matter how far he runs, no matter how much he sends his aides to pressure members of Congress into not voting for the release of the Epstein files, the country still wants to see what went down. The survivors want to know what is in those files, and they want accountability too. And we've got some new reporting today from the Wall Street Journal that goes behind the scenes into the discussions that Trump has been having with his aides in the White House over the last couple months as this crisis has deepened. But before we get to that, I want to take a look real quick at this interaction on CNN between a MAGA congressman, Mike Lawler, and a CNN host that went completely off the rails, and I think is a perfect encapsulation of what Republican congressmen do at this point whenever they're confronted on Epstein or any other issue, which is to just repeat White House talking points over and over again and just pretend like they can't hear what's being asked of them.
Barack Obama did that in 2013, shut down numerous
These
agencies
are permanent. This
and
is a call.
departments,
This is a call for
well
permanent.
over a month, creating havoc.
This is a call, Congressman. This is different.
This
is different. Just Congressman, can I get my question?
Government open and funded. So, John,
this is a call
for
for permanent firings.
To this.
I'm just asking
Senate
if there is a shutdown.
Should join Senate Republicans and pass the continuing resolution. What exactly is Chuck Schumer's basis for not passing a clean CR? By the way, these are Biden spending levels.
I'm not sure the audio is working here, Congressman.
In the clean CR.
Because I'm trying to ask you. I'm just trying to ask you about the OMB letter. I'm just trying to ask you.
There is absolutely zero justification on the Democratic side to oppose a clean CR.
I was asking about the OMB letter. I'll try one more time. I think you can hear me. If there is a
truly being a Republican member of Congress must be the easiest job in the world. You just go out there, rubber stamp whatever Donald Trump's agenda is, do nothing to hold him accountable, do nothing to confront his various attacks on freedom of speech, attacks on the rule of law. Just do whatever he wants, do your cable TV hit, and go home. Worst comes to worst, if any TV host or any one of your constituents confronts you with a difficult question or actually asks what you believe on an issue, just talk right over them. But of course, I'm only referring to these backbench Republican congressmen who don't stand for anything. The job is a little bit harder for Mike Johnson, who's their Speaker of the House, who also doesn't stand for anything, but for the first time in his life is actually facing somewhat of a Republican revolt when it comes to the Epstein files. And I mean, it's like 4 Republicans who are not going along with Trump on this, but 4 is all you need. Top congressional Republicans and White House allies are working behind the scenes to prevent a politically charged floor vote to release the government's Jeffrey Epstein case files next month, according to multiple sources familiar with the discussions. The intensifying effort to halt that floor vote comes as Reps Thomas Massie, a Kentucky Republican, and Ro Khanna, a California Democrat, declared on Wednesday that they have the 218 votes needed to compel a win when Congress returns. That final signature on their petition to force the vote will come from Rep-elect Adelita Grijalva, who won a special election in Arizona Tuesday night once she is formally sworn in. And that's why Donald Trump and his allies and Mike Johnson are going to go to extreme lengths to try and peel off at least 1 or 2 of those Republicans who already signed on to the discharge petition to take their names off, because they do not want this thing to come to the floor by any means necessary. And that's where this Wall Street Journal exclusive that we got today comes in. Because really, for the first time, what we got was an inside look at Donald Trump's own reasoning to his aides about why he didn't want these files to come out. Trump was used to having absolute control over his base. The Epstein issue was an anomaly, a negative story on which many of his supporters didn't seem inclined to follow his lead. White House officials say they underestimated how sticky the issue would prove to be, believing it would blow over and people would move on. Instead, it spurred White House Situation Room meetings and months of strategizing by senior administration officials. Trump told aides he couldn't understand why people were so obsessed with the deceased financier and sex offender. According to people familiar with his comments, people don't understand that Palm Beach in the 90s was a different time, he groused. Palm Beach in the 90s was a different time, is what he was telling people. The implication being there that being a sexual predator or being creepy or being someone who sleeps with underage girls was, par for the course among these rich guys in Palm Beach at the time. That is literally what he was going with to his friends, is telling them, like, essentially the locker room talk defense of like, hey, everyone was doing it. And look, maybe alone in a vacuum, that comment that it was a different time wouldn't be a smoking gun, but you pair that with the birthday note. You pair that with Jeffrey Epstein himself on tape refusing to answer the question if he and Donald Trump socialized with minors. You pair that with all the other evidence we have right now, and it is so clear that Donald Trump himself is somehow implicated in wrongdoing, or will at a bare minimum be incredibly embarrassed by what is in these files. And the balls of the people in this administration and Donald Trump himself to continue gaslighting his own supporters and just the American people at large about what they stand for, while at the same time he's covering up for this dead pedophile, it is insane.
But if you're a man, I don't care what skin color you are, I don't care whether you're rich or poor, but if you're a man and you see the pleading eyes of a girl looking up for protection, then we have to protect our girls and our women in this country.
Yeah, JD Vance says if you're a man and you see the pleading eyes of a girl looking up for protection, then we have to protect our girls. But apparently not the girls in the Epstein files. If you're one of the girls or women that Jeffrey Epstein harmed, then Donald Trump says you don't matter. Hell, the entirety of conservative-controlled media, which is state-run media at this point when it comes to Fox News, they also think that you don't matter. But you know what does matter to them? Whoever was operating that escalator.
Happened this week at the UN. I want to get your take on this because President Trump says the Secret Service is investigating what he is calling triple sabotage after his time at the United Nations on Tuesday. The president wants answers after the escalator stopped as soon as he and the First Lady stepped on it. Look how great Melania was. She is unfazed. She walks on it. It stops. She turns around to the president, and she just leads the president up and walks. So she was unfazed by it. But this could have been a massive issue. And the president being frozen there in one place makes him vulnerable. Later the same morning, the teleprompter goes dark in the middle of his speeches. And then, in the middle of his address, rather. And then the president also said that the sound was off during his remarks, and only the people with interpreters speaking into earpieces could actually hear his address. The UN reports that they ordered a thorough investigation and are, quote, ready to cooperate in full transparency with relevant U.S. authorities. Congressman, do you know if we're going to get answers on this?
I surely hope so. And if the Secret Service has opened up an investigation and the UN's doing an investigation, obviously all of those things could not be a coincidence.
There has literally been more Republican interest in investigating this UN escalator over the last few days than there has been interest in investigating with what went down with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, you literally cannot make it up. They're talking still about Joe Biden's auto pen. He's sending the FBI after James Comey. But, when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, whoa, why are we going back and relitigating this stuff? It's just an absolute joke. But no matter how much pressure he puts on members of Congress or how much pressure he puts on the media, Donald Trump simply does not have the votes, he does not have the narrative, and he's running out of time.
Representative Grahavla has already said, hey, I'm signing when I get to Congress, so that gives us the 218. I do find it interesting, though. You have Congressman Massey talking to Axios and saying, don't let it be a Democrat who's the 218th signature. Let it be a Republican. That would be good for us to signal we want transparency. I appreciate Congressman Massey's sentiment there. But my second point is 218. Getting to 218 is 218. And if it's a Democrat that gets you there, you got your number. What does that piece look like now going forward when the Congress convenes after a short break in the beginning of October?
Great news, first of all, for the country, for Democrats, for transparency. Look, Adelita Grijalva, besides being that key 218th vote, is a fighter. And I think we should all be excited that we've got another, aggressive fighter in the Congress that's going to push really hard against Donald Trump every day. And what's exciting, of course, is she is going to be that key deciding signature to get actually that petition, those votes onto the floor, out the door, so we can get the entire Congress behind the release of the files. And what's important for folks to know is we know we already have a subpoena in place through the Oversight Committee, of which we force a vote on to get those documents to the committee. the DOJ has stalled that. What this does, though, is this gives the power of the entire Congress behind the release of the files. And from what I'm hearing, unless Mike Johnson pulls out another Trump maneuver and being directed by Trump to do something differently, I am hearing there are other Republicans that actually want to actually vote on this issue. And they want to be on the record supporting transparency. So we invite every Republican that believes in good government and really justice for these survivors and these victims to sign on, to vote. Let's get all of the files in front of the Congress and out to the American public. Great win for Democrats, by the way. And I'll add, she overperformed. Every race, Democrats are overperforming. That's probably a good sign for us as we go into next year.
Let's talk then about the timing of this discharge petition. Can we pull up the House calendar? You got a work week. You have a week where the House is in session. You have a district work week. How soon do you think Grijalva is signed into office? And then how soon do you think you can potentially have that discharge petition on the floor?
Well, we're waiting for Republicans to actually call the House back into session. I mean, we were going to have session this upcoming Monday and Tuesday, and they actually abruptly canceled that right before a possible shutdown. Look, Donald Trump wants a shutdown. He wants to be king. He has no interest anymore in governance or working with Congress. And the American public should be very clear-eyed that Donald Trump and Republicans are actually now going to own the shutdown. They want to halt this government. They could care less about providing services. They want to hurt veterans. And so Democrats have to be prepared to be in D.C. and ensure that we're pushing back every single time Trump opens his mouth over some craziness that he's talking about as it relates to funding the government. He has no idea what he's talking about and the damage he's going to cause across the country. And so it is possible that Mike Johnson calls the Congress back maybe October 1st, maybe before. We have no indication when that's going to happen. But right when he does that, we're going to have Adelita there on that day, getting sworn in and getting that petition signed. So it could be midweek this week. I hope it's sooner.